We've changed settings. Welcome back, everybody. Rob Ellis, Tone to Shields, hanging out with you on this New Year's Day. And again, I hope wish everybody the best in 2024, man. Hope you have a great year. All right, Tone, let's set our sights. We're talking some Eagles here, and it was not a pretty way to close out 23, that's for sure. But let's turn our sights to the defense. Okay. 29 points allowed in the second half versus the Cardinals. 22 points versus the Giants. So they've allowed 51 points in the second half the last 2 weeks. Outscored 30-0 the last 2 weeks in the third quarter. Let's go to time of possession. Let's start with that one. Arizona held the ball for 39 minutes and 39 seconds compared to 20-21 for the Eagles. Tone, that is more than a full quarter. That is almost a quarter and 5 minutes in which they held the ball longer than the Eagles did. If you ever need to look at another stat, they just can't get off the field, man. And again, the drives were 64, 59, 75, 77, 77, and 70 on the touchdowns and the field goals for them. And they scored on all 4 of their final drives to go along with no punts. This is the Arizona Cardinals that came in ranked in the bottom 6, bottom 7 in almost every meaningful offensive category.
And we're supposed to believe that this team is going to go into the playoffs and just change or flip a switch, based on everything you said, right? I mean, and, this is me obviously being sarcastic, but you give up over 200 rushing yards on the ground, over 200 rushing yards, the most you've given up in God knows how long. Time of possession, they possessed the ball for basically 2.5 quarters of that game.
Correct.
2.5 quarters.
The offense felt like it was never on the field in the first half, and you still somehow had 21 points.
Right. And again, for the most part, offense took advantage of the opportunities that they barely were given.
Yeah.
For the most part, right? Jalen Hurts was pretty much in control of the game. And then third quarter comes and they can't get them off the field.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But then you can't punch back in that third quarter. Okay, fair enough. You get the ball and you can't close the game out. You can't trust this defense in those situations.
Right.
This defense has shown there's a such thing as actually having real trust in something and then just having blind faith.
Yeah.
Nick Sirianni has this blind faith in this defense as if they've shown you week in and week out, you do not allow them to be the last group on the field.
Yep.
And when you do so, you run the risk of losing the game. Unless you're up by 2 or 3 scores in the final 3 minutes, you can't trust this defense to do anything in that span of time. And let's be frank about this. They're too talented on a defensive line to allow an inferior Cardinals offensive line to push them off the ball the way they did. Right. They dominated them they dominated them at the point of attack. But even beyond that, James Conner bullied anybody who came near him. Flat out bullied anybody who decided to put hands and feet on him.
He beat you up.
Just flat out. But we're supposed to just believe that, okay, once you get into
the
playoffs,
here, Tone, here's part of the
everyone is 0-0, and now your record doesn't matter. It's all about what you do that day. Well, I don't trust you on any given day.
Well, part of it is he's living in the past. What I mean by that is you see it on the offensive side of the ball. It's like, well, this worked last year. You throw it deep to AJ or whatever, or let's run Jalen, even though we know he's not fully healthy. But this worked last year, so it's got to work this year. We're going to impose our will. Guess what, man? It works on the other side of the ball, too. Your defense is nowhere near what it was last year. They had 70 sacks last year. You have 41 this year. They were a team that took the ball away at a high rate. You had a great plus-minus last year. You don't have any of that this year. So to go conservative like he did in that last drive after the onside kick is a joke because your defense wasn't stopping you and I in that game. All right. The 449 to 275 total yards. You got outrushed 221 to 91. You allowed 221 on the ground. They give up 100 yards, at the drop of a hat. Now, I'll give you a great Reuben Frank stat. Through week 10, the Eagles allowed 66 yards per game rushing, which was number 1 in football. They were the best team by far, and it wasn't even close. 3.7 yards per carry. Unbelievable. You know what they are since then? They give up a $153. They went from 66 to 153 per game on the ground and 4.8 yards per carry.
How is that possible? Help me understand this, Rob, right? You're giving up nearly 100 more rushing yards in the span of a bye week.
Right.
How is that possible? That's not just rookie wall. That's not just fatigue.
Right.
That's so many more issues, in my opinion. What's going on in the classroom?
Yeah.
Right. What are the assignments? What's going on with the discipline? And when you to go for, again, if they went from giving up 66 rushing yards, 65 rushing yards a game to
66 to 153.
How? Explain it. Can someone in the live chat explain that to me?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you a couple things. One, the defensive line in general this season has played so far down from the talent that they have. Think about it, Tone. If you just look at the starters, you have a first-round pick. I'm going to call, technically Jalen Carter didn't start yesterday. Jordan Davis did. Okay. Yeah. But you know what I'm talking about here with the rotation. You have a number one pick with Carter. You have a number one pick with Jordan Davis. You have a number one pick with Fletcher Cox. These are all first-rounders. You have a guy that you signed as a free agent in Hassan Reddick and paid a nice price for. You extended Sweat a couple of years ago and gave him a nice salary. You have another number one pick in Nolan Smith. So my point is, you've invested a lot in your defensive line. Like that's where you view winning games. If you're not going to pay attention to your linebackers, your front four better be great. They're killing you. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. Why? There's a lot of different whys. I think you have guys who aren't playing as hard as they could play.
Okay, let me ask you this real quick. Let's kind of go down the list, right? Mm-hmm. I think we can agree from a defensive line standpoint, it can't be a talent issue.
No, there's talent.
It can't be. Okay, so it's not the talent, right? Okay, next. Is there an effort issue?
I think in some cases, yes.
Okay.
I'll tell you who I think. I think Fletcher Cox has been really good all year. I think he's had an awesome year. I want Fletcher Cox back. I think he's been awesome. So I am not talking about Fletcher Cox. I think for the most part, Jalen Carter's been good. He's been certainly more quiet, and I do think he's tired a little bit. He's a rookie. I don't know there's no excuse for Jordan Davis. You're in your second year now. You know what an NFL season is. You know the rigors of it, how long it is, what you have to go through. You told us you were in shape. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear the rookie.
And in fairness to him, he has come a long way. But at this point in the season, to go from 65 rushing yards given up to over 150, 140, something is off. Something's in the water. Something's not being conveyed. Somebody's not listening to some. You can't go in week and week out and look at this issue with this talent on the defensive line and say, okay, we have no answers.
Well,
it makes no sense to me.
Yeah. So a couple other guys. Josh Sweat went on last week when asked about his production, went on and on and on about how productive he is. He's not getting sacks, but he's rushed the best he's rushed all year. You haven't had sacks in 6 games. Like, come on, man. Like, I don't care. I'm happy you're getting close and you can impact a game that way. You're paid to get sacks and bring the guy down and tackle him. And there was an instance yesterday. I understand Kyler Murray is slippery and he's a guy who can get out of jams and all that. You had him dead to rights. Do you remember the play?
Yes,
okay.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And he breaks your tackle, and escapes out. And I think it was the one that he throws to Connor where Connor makes a great one-handed catch.
Yep, the one-handed, yep.
So, I'm sorry, man. You don't get the benefit of the doubt on that one. You have to bring that dude to the ground. He had been sacked in 6 games 16 times. Kyler Murray. So he's not impossible to bring down. So Josh Sweat hasn't done enough. Hassan Reddick's been good, I'd say, but not great.
He hasn't been that good in the run lately, obviously.
No. But here's another thing, and this is where I'll lop coaching into this. You realize Hassan Reddick was dropped back 7 times, which is a season high. Why in God's name has Hassan Reddick in coverage? He is not a coverage guy. That's why he wanted to get out of Arizona, because he wanted to be an edge guy. The very beginning of last year, if you remember, he wasn't that effective because they were still trying to figure out his role. When they finally came to the conclusion that let's just let this dude pin his ears back, and do his thing. And he was fine against the run too last year, but he's not a guy who's good in coverage. Why is he in coverage? So I think it's players and it's coaching. I think that it's really both sides of this thing are letting them down and coming up really small.
Yeah,
and Brandon Graham's been very quiet too.
Yeah.
And Paul pointed that out. He's right.
Yeah, and look, I'm not against throwing a curveball here and there, right? I'm not against you dropping them back
sometimes
once,
stuff breaks down and
maybe.
you got to do it. I get it.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes, it's a situation where, okay, we've been rushing them all day. Let's drop them back once or twice to try to force the quarterback to see something else. I understand that, but when you drop them back 7 times in a game, come on. And again, you see Matt Patricia doing all these random, John McMullen was talking about it last night. You see big nickel, small dime, big dime, small. Like they're so all over the place in what they're asking these guys to do defensively. How can you expect them to get better at anything? You change the coordinator on them at with the weirdest time of the season, and there was a point in the game where the announcers were like, since the change, the defense has been a little better in these areas, but then luckily they had some competency back there, and one of the guys said that is true, but let's keep in mind, Giants, Cardinals, or Seahawks, Giants rather, versus Cowboys, Niners. It's easy for your numbers to look better when you're going up against those. When you're going up against that difference in talent, right? Yeah. So, in so many words, demoting Sean Desai, what really did that show? But a lack of stability, a lack of conviction.
Scapegoat.
It just showed the level of dysfunction in your building. You thought you were plugging a leak when in reality you done created so many more holes.
Yeah, it looked desperate at the time. It looks more desperate now. Like, I don't think Desai was doing a good job, but look at what's happening under Patricia. I mean, I'll just give you an example, Tone. I mean, I'm going to hit you with some more numbers.
Yeah, I got some that's the thing, right? I don't say this. I don't speak on Sean Desai's behalf because I feel like he was doing a great job. I don't believe he was doing a great job at all. What I'm saying is, this change proved nothing except for that the real culprit behind this defense and their deficiencies is obviously effort. But beyond that, Howie Roseman hasn't done a good enough job in replenishing the talent lost. And that's the one thing that stands out. And they have no depth almost. So
since Patricia took over, and look, it's a little bit unfair because he was really thrown into the fire in the Seattle week, but he's been the coordinator for 3 games. They have 4 sacks in those 3 games. I mean, it's not like all of a sudden you figured that part out. And so let's go back to yesterday. How about 19 first downs in the second half the Cardinals had? Just in the second half, they had 19 first downs. Total yards, 449 to 275. Total plays. Cardinals had 25 more total plays, 72 to 47 yesterday. 4 drives that the Cardinals had that lasted more than 5 minutes. This isn't just taking the ball over at the 5-yard line after a fumble and punching it in. This is like long, methodical third down after third down after third down kind of conversion.
They were patient and they beat their ass.
Exactly.
Simple as that.
They took what was there. It didn't matter. They didn't punt, man. They didn't punt. It's the 9th. So 9 times this year the Eagles have led by double digits. Listen to this one. So you've gotten a lead of double digits 9 times this year. You realize they've lost 3 of those games being up by double digits. So your defense collapses as the day goes on, as the game goes on. You're not able to make adjustments in the second half. In fact, the other team totally out adjusts you, and then it becomes scramble mode. And we kept saying, look, the offense is going to have to outdo the defense. They're going to have to put up a lot of points. It's getting to the point now where your offense is going to have to get in the 40s. If the Cardinals are dropping 35 on you, you're going to have to get into the 40s now. That's too big an ask.
Right. The Giants put up, 28? What was it? The Giants put up where is it?
Whatever it was. I think it was 20. Yeah,
25.
Like
25.
Yeah.
25. You gave up 25 points to the Giants and you gave up 35 points to the Cardinals.
It's just not, look, it's not good enough. And that was a side of the ball where last year you were number 1 against the pass. You were really good in points allowed. You were number 1 in sacks. You were really good in takeaways. Like all the key metrics were there last year. You were good in the red zone, all that. And the point, one of the points too should be, as I say it myself, and I'm hearing myself say it, there is no comparison to last year. We have to stop doing that. These two teams are on different orbits. That team was a totally different team than this team. It's not even close.
They're nowhere near the same team. They're
No.
not even being. I don't know if obviously they're not being coached the same. Obviously, and I just don't think. And I think Nick Sirianni shot his load. I'll be honest with you. And we're probably going to talk about this on the offensive side, but I think he shot his load.
Yep.
I think once the league caught up with whatever he had this team doing last year, he has no answers or no adjustments to elevate or evolve. What he asked this offense to do. I mean, I think he shot his load. I think his messages. I think his message has grown stale. I think this team has figured him out, and they've completely checked out on whatever message he's selling.
Yeah,
I believe that firmly.
I do too. Let me sprinkle a bit of good news in here because we need it. Devontae Smith, who had the walking boot and the crutches last night, they believe it's only a mild ankle sprain, according to Ian Rappaport. He's going to have more tests today just to make sure, but there's positivity coming out of that. So there ain't much, man. So I had to give you something. Okay, so that's good. And we're going to get into the play in which he got injured, which I'm still literally I'm still angry about. Okay. But, that's good. Thankfully that it looks like Devontae's going to be okay. The other thing, Tone, it was pretty underplayed in my opinion. Avonte Maddox is having testing for his left arm.
Yeah, I heard about that. I heard he had to get an X-ray last night or something like that, right?
He can't stay on the field, man. He's a really good player. He can't stay on the field. It's a problem. And how can you go into next year counting on him? Honestly.
How can you go into next year counting on this defense in any capacity? I mean, I have a hard time believing how he's just going to flip this defense, in the next season or so. He's going to have a historic offseason to get this defense back on track. You got to address linebacker. You got to address safety. You got to address corner. You got to address edge. He has to address the entire defense except for the D tackle spot.
Yep. Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, you're back 7, and you're really locked in with some salaries with the corners, with the older corners. It's a bad spot, man. And it's, the other thing is we may have seen the last home game for Brandon Graham, Jason Kelce, potentially Fletcher Cox, Lane Johnson. That's a tough pill to swallow too.
That's a disappointing. That's gravely disappointing if that's the case. Gravely.
Yeah. And for it to end like that, again, if you're going out battling a real team and you lose, yeah, we're all sitting here disappointed today. But man, to lose to that team when you had that kind of lead, completely unacceptable. In fact, disgraceful. Just unacceptable.
Embarrassing, disgraceful, insult to injury. You lose to Jonathan Gannon, the guy we've been killing all off season.
Playing your worst football at the worst time of year on top of it. I mean, this is when you have to start ascending. And you're crashing and burning.
Ascending or maintaining.
Yeah, either one. If you were playing at a high level, just keep it. Like the Ravens. I mean, the
Ravens are ascending, actually.
They're just trucking people.
I think the Ravens are ascending.
Yeah.
I think the Niners and the Cowboys are trying to maintain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I would definitely say the Niners for sure. Cowboys got their legs under them a little bit with the win, even though it was controversial.
I think the Bills are ascending.
Bills are definitely ascending. The Rams, even though they barely won yesterday,
are ascending. The Buccaneers are ascending.
Yes.
I don't know. The Lions, I feel like they're trying to maintain as well. But overall, the Philadelphia Eagles, they are very easily and clearly descending. They're declining every week. The message is getting stale, more stale every single week. And you're seeing, once again, and I know we're on the defensive side, but and we're going to talk about this on the offense, but once again, quarterback draw, back to back, bubble screen.
Yep, back to back. And they went back to back in an earlier series too with the and a word of advice for Jalen, not that he's listening to me, but dude, stop with the cutback. Stop changing fields and trying to go backwards for 7 yards. It ain't there right now for you, whether it's the knee or whatever. Lamar Jackson can maybe pull that off. You can't right now.
Yeah,
so
or
just
at least they need to have
the 2-yard loss instead of making it a 5-yard, 7-yard loss.
Right. They just or give him some kind of pass option outside of that. Like it's almost like they just hitch their wagon to the quarterback draw and then they just pray to God that when none of the wheels fall off. And it's like you gotta have some I felt like they were creative in some parts of that game. You know what I mean? There was a play where
the fake tush push was creative.
The fake brotherly shove with Kenny Gainwell pass. I'm like, okay, they're getting creative, they're getting confident, and then they just that's why I can't trust this coaching staff because they string together this, they string together these creative moments and they have these stretches where you think the offense is figuring it out, and all of a sudden, when it matters most, you resort to the most simplistic part of your playbook. And when it matters most, you know what they do? They say, okay, we can't figure it out. Let's just put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands.
Right.
Herbie does something magical.
So this stuff used to happen back in the day, right? So when Randall was here, Buddy Ryan ignored the offensive line too much. He didn't have the proper kind of weapons around him, and he had a great defense, right? So you know what he used to do? He would say, I'm not even kidding you. He would say to Randall, hey, man, go out and make me 4 or 5 plays. You make me 4 or 5 plays, the defense will do enough, we'll win the game. And it would put this ridiculous burden on Randall Cunningham to go out there and, perform magic tricks, right? It feels like that to me. It's like, we can't really get that creative, but Jalen, go figure it out. No, man. You think Sean McVay would do that? Like, do you think Mike McDaniel is going to do that? Do you think these other guys who have Zach Taylor, who have creative offenses,
Ken Dorsey got fired for that? Ken Dorsey got fired because he kept putting his quarterback in situations where he had to be Superman.
Exactly.
And Joe Brady comes in and just dials it all back and say, look, we're going to play team football. You're talented, but we're not going to rely on your talent every single play to get us through. Mm-hmm. We got to play complementary football. And this coaching staff, those final 3 plays just signify to me they have no creative juices. No creative juices. None. We need to save this for the next segment.
Yeah, let's jump into it. Let's hit it. Let's come back and we're going to dig into the offensive side of this thing because there's a lot to dive into with that as well. We'll talk NFL later too, like we always do. We'll tell you what's going on. We'll look at the standings. We'll look at who needs to do what. There's a lot of implications. There's still a lot on the line in this as we go into the last week. And by the way, we know the Eagles are going to play at 4:25 on Sunday in New York, or in North Jersey. We know that at least. So we'll dig into that when we get back. Don't go anywhere. He's Tone DeShields. I am Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take on this New Year's Day. All right, let's talk about Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group, because knowing who to trust with your finances is a challenge, and it's also incredibly important. And I found the right person, and I want you to have that right person as well. Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group, whether it's retirement planning, 401k review, insurance review, you might have a small business. You're trying to get your employee benefits off the ground. That's another resource that Jim can help you with. I personally have entrusted my IRA, my 401k rollover with Jim, and I couldn't be any happier. You will be too. Give him a call, 610-996-4751, 610-996-4751. You could also email him as well. Murray, Murray.Jim@principal.com. That's Murray,